Welcome to the Center in the City podcast. I'm your host, Wade Brill, and during this series, I'll be interviewing various thought leaders, wellness experts, and humans on how they practice sustainable self-care and mindfulness. We'll get real and raw, talk about the light and the shadow side of self-care and mindfulness, and how we can actually stay centered amid the chaos and the hustle and bustle of our modern day world. So settle in and get centered. This podcast episode is brought to you by Centered in the City, a virtual on-demand self-care and mindfulness platform with over 100 different meditations, journaling prompts, nourishing recipes, and Pilates flows, all designed to support you feeling calm, focused, and energized as you live your life in this modern day world. For more information, head on over to centeredinthecity.org and claim your 7-day free trial. Notice how much better you will feel by having a consistent practice to support you staying centered. Welcome back to the Center in the City podcast. On today's episode, we have Hector Marcel with us, who is the president of 3 Jewels. It's a New York City-based enlightenment studio that focuses on helping people reach their higher potential through meditation, yoga, talks, and community outreach. Hector and I had a really great conversation about the importance of a meditation practice in our modern day world, especially living in cities and especially as New Yorkers and high achievers, and how to quiet that impulse in our mind that says we want that magic pill that's going to fix it all and we get to achieve and strive at meditation. Hector also talks to us about the amazing Gala that is going on tonight in New York City. So if you are a lucky listener in New York, head to the show notes and click on the Gala link to learn more. Centered in the City listeners get a discount code for listening and signing up. Also, stick to the end of the episode and you get to hear Hector's beautiful vision for this event that really helps it come alive, and realize that when we practice meditation, we are not just practicing for ourselves, but we are practicing for the collective and all beings on this earth. So settle into this episode and get centered. Hector, what a pleasure. Welcome to the Centered in the City podcast.
Hi, Wade. Thanks so much for having me. It's actually really exciting to be able to talk about these powerful things with you.
I love it. And I love that you are in New York right now. So it feels like we can just kind of bring the city energy into the Centered in the City podcast. You said right before we hit record, we might hear some trains in the background. And I'm like, yes, bring it. I miss the sound of the trains.
The J train, my companion in my meditations.
I'd love to begin by hearing a little bit of tell us a time when you weren't centered. As a meditation teacher, I think there's this connotation that we can be super calm and peaceful all of the time. And so I'd love to hear, tell us the time when you weren't centered.
This morning. This morning, I got up and I ran into my day because there was things back to back, and I caught myself not being in the same state of mind that I like to put myself in about the 3rd cup of coffee into meetings, that I'm like, I've just drank coffee all morning. It's now 11 o'clock. What the hell am I doing? I haven't meditated yet. I did a little bit of yoga. And it's not that I was off the rails or wild. It's just that there is a place that after years of meditating, you can get yourself to. I don't know if you can hear the train now. Good.
We'll just welcome it into our practice.
That you could, there's this ever regressing observer that has a peaceful experience of whatever is going on. I disconnected from that this morning and dove straight in because, it's a busy week. But I don't relate to being uncentered because it never unravels me anymore. So I don't relate to it the same way I used to when I was an early meditator, where I'd beat myself up for not holding my view or, maintaining my state of mind. It's actually part of the growth. It's just like any meditation. It's never the bliss that comes from it. It's always the exercise of returning, the flexing of the mental muscle to return your attention to where you want it. That's meditation. Mm-hmm. The others is just the result of meditation, this peaceful state of being. And I think we confuse them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're so right, because there tends to be this grasping for calm, for peace, and if you're not feeling that in your practice, then what am I doing wrong, right? And
especially in New York.
Yeah, tell me more.
In New York, everyone's achieving enlightenment. I have to achieve it now. I have to be the perfect Instagram meditator and look a certain way. And the reality is polar opposites. The reality is, like, in the mess, can you watch yourself getting hooked? And what is your mental narrative and your real response to that? How are you redirecting the inertia to be unraveled? How do you redirecting the inertia to be hooked into an emotion or to have to achieve the thing? And to observe that is a kind of magic, because every time you choose a response to that pattern, that's what's causing the future experience of the similar thing. Meaning, if you just observe and go and find some wisdom, some lesson, some distance, the next time the hooks come your way, you won't be hooked by nature. You've just rehabituated your mind through focus meditation to experience that thing differently, with a little bit more distance, much more panoramic view, and then you make a better choice. And those steps by steps, better choices end up giving you a kind of sustained, peaceful state of mind. But early on, oh my God, and in New York still, I run 3 Joules, and everyone comes to 3 Joules to achieve the pill of meditation. Mm-hmm. And you just got to go through that.
Mm-hmm. I think many of my listeners can relate to being achievers, whether they live in New York City or, around the world. And you're so right of like how we have this expectation when we sit on our cushion or when we enter our practice that, it's going to be a certain way. And I love what you're creating for us here. When we pause, we get to rewire ourselves from that habit, from that habitual response, and have more space to choose. And then that choosing is us starting to rewire our brain and our new neural pathways so that we can show up differently and be in relationship to, as you say, the hooks a little differently.
Yeah. The cool thing, I'm thinking a lot about this. I've got these little daily things on Instagram, little stories, reels that I do just to put my words out there in regular terms. I've been studying Tibetan Buddhist philosophy in a really heady way for 25 years. And I teach it, and it's like terms, and it's very heady, intellectual, philosophical debate on reality and the nature of mind. And if you're that kind of Buddhist, you nerd out in that thing. But that's just a language, a code for what helps us transcend the stuckness of the human condition. And every tradition that's been able to realize that transcendence will have a language, and the ones that survived a long time will be a religion, But at the end of all that, every single creature with a mind has the possibility to experience that rapture because it's in us. It's not like Buddhists don't own enlightenment, nobody owns that state of mind but you. And so I've been doing these reels to talk about that, and the necessity to study what the hell we really are at the core is vital, because I think, I'm just saying this because I heard you talk about neuropathways and etc. The meat that we are, meaning the meat suit we wear and the meat chunks whereby the electrical signals and chemicals abide, I think in the West versus the East, we tend to identify with the physicality of us and think we're a collection of chemicals and neuropathways, and we are. Yeah, out of all the infinite things in the universe, out of all the rocks crashing against each other in the mass of space and time, supernovas coming and going, sentient beings are this tiny, tiny fraction. We're already a freaking miracle.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like just out of all the matter in the universe, we are aware. Like this is crazy, right? And can communicate our awareness, even crazier. Yeah. And out of all the sentient creatures, we're not stuck underground, burrowing holes under the earth in blindness, never seeing a star for entirety of our lives. We are in the immensity of it all. So human beings are this peak experience of consciousness, right? And in the meat that we hold, like with the pathways that carry our patterns, and those patterns are what force us to respond to reality in a certain way. When we investigate that a little further, we find this immense, immense possibility of being able to transcend even our best ideas of who we could be. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that made any sense at all, but I've got this thing going in my head now that even if we regulate the human condition to the best of what we imagine, you're way more than that. Way, way more than that. Like we're an impossible thing.
I love where you're coming from, and we have infinite insights and wisdom in our bodies, as you said, in our meat that we hold, that's around our bones, and there is unlimited potential. And that's one of the reasons I love the work that I do, because it's so interesting to me to discover what's present for myself. How is what's happening inside my own mind and body connected to the greater world? I'm curious, living in New York City, working with New Yorkers, how do you cultivate that shift for them to kind of get out of the head and the achieving mentality to tap into just that innate wisdom that is present in them without them, quote unquote, needing to do anything? Because we're so good and conditioned the doing.
Yeah, it's not a popular answer, but I'll tell you my method. Okay, it's not a popular answer because I think people would like to think that meditating means clearing away the garbage and not thinking about anything and not doing. There is something to do. There really is something to do. So I re-engage the achievement mindset to a virtue, to a good thing in your mind. And for this, I think we have to differentiate, I think, what East and West think about who we are. We are much more outer physical beings in the Western way of looking at the world. In the Eastern way of looking at the world, we're not the meat. We're not even the neuropathways or the chemicals. They are the manifestation of the consciousness, the mind that resides in what we think we are. But even if you look at the limitations of the human eye, for example, I did some research. We can only see something like 0.0035% of the visual field. 0.0035% of what could be seen is what we actually see. We miss 99.99 something % of reality because our biology, like the cones and rods in our eyes, and then that turned into electrical signals in the brain, and that habituated into I see blue. Yeah? The mind then imputes blue. And the unlimited potential you're talking about and how I can connect regular everyday beings into that is give them something else to chase, knowing that they're going to try and achieve something. Like, achieve this, and they're like, oh, in my mind, I can do that. Good. Now you've got the inertia of an entire New York day. Instead of being pushed to trying to manipulate outer things like a better job and a relationship and all that to give me happiness, well, apply that same energy to looking at the way you engage with reality, because that's where happiness will be found, regardless of the outside thing. So just a switch in mindset still uses the inertia that we've been so habituated to chase the result until they get enough experience that then we can drop the trying. But initially, it's like you can't catch a race car running. Just put it in a different racetrack, and then they start seeing the scenery different. Okay, at least you've got some inertia. And I know it's a kind of trick. I don't know if that's popular, but it works for so many people.
I love that approach because it's taking their energy and it's just kind of funneling it into more of a skillful way that it sounds like then they find their own path to, oh, I don't actually need to try so hard.
Correct. And they'll only find that after they've done the new racetrack a couple of times. They're like, oh, I'm actually the driver of the car. So I can turn a little bit here in the corner that they like most. And most people come to inner awakening in all sorts of ways, some through movement, some through dance, some through meditation, some through whatever. But that's how I tend to trick new people into trying to look at the world through a really upside down perspective. It's no longer, if you want to be happy, if you want like less problem things and more goodness in your world, stop rearranging the outside things and think that's going to give you happiness. If you don't change, if you don't change your mindset, the way you understand the world to be, then it doesn't matter how much you change the outside. Your mindset will return it to the same old racetrack. You need to change the way you view your relationship to the world. And this is the biggest flip, I think, in the Eastern philosophy, the biggest flip. So what someone said a terrible thing? Someone says a terrible thing, you can either be a victim or a victor, just being alliteration. I don't know. You can either be offended, but that's you being offended. That harms your being. I'm offended. Now I'm sad. Now I'm terrible. That's you. No one gives a rat's. No one knows what you're feeling outside. Yes, but I hate this. Okay, you are now habituating hate. It's you. So the mindset is very different. Doesn't matter what's happening outside. If it's happening already. Like you being angry won't help it. You being jealous won't help it. You being frustrated won't help it. It actually harms you. And so that mindset of taking full responsibility for your response to the world, it sounds simple, infinitely difficult.
Oh my God, I study and teach this, and I'm continually practicing, right? I'm continually students to this, because it is to realize that we get to take responsibility for our actions and for our mindset. Even, in relationship with my husband, putting down that we're both Tauruses. And so putting down the like, no, I'm right. You're wrong. Right. And needing to like justify that versus what's the bigger intention and goal here? Oh, it's to be and act from love. And how can we change the way that we're saying things and doing things so that we're coming from that intention versus, the need to be right or the need to be seen.
And those are all old patterns, and they're the patterns we've learned on this planet for ages. There's this thing my teacher taught me. I don't know if it can translate. Let's have a look. The old metaphor is that your partner, there are two partners in your kitchen. You're doing your thing in your kitchen, and there are two husbands for you, for example. For me too, it'd be two husbands, right? Two husbands in the kitchen. One is, let's say the husband or the partner says something that upsets you, and then you want to yell back, yeah? In Buddhist thought, that husband that forces you to yell back does not exist in the way you think they exist. They didn't force you to yell back, yeah? That husband that made you yell because you're offended or they said something that upset you cannot exist, because it's not separate from whatever got you upset in the first place. It's not the husband you should be attacking or re-attacking or defending or arguing. Not that partner. It's actually the force inside of us that would project onto them all our frustrations and blame and victimization. The second husband is the husband that would appear saying the stupid thing in the kitchen or whatever, but is not separate to me. And so when you hear something offensive or beautiful from that other partner, you're like, oh, my mind is coloring that whole experience. The part of my mind that is engaging with that second husband is me. That's a real husband in the kitchen. That's a real partner. The one that is not separate to my connection with them. Because they could say words, and one day you'd be upset because you're in a mood, and the next day you'd be happy because you're in a mood, and the middle day you don't give a rat's because you're busy thinking something else. Same words from the husband, three realities from us. So we get to consciously choose the response to every reality that could be out there. And that's how we create our world. I don't know if that translated. It's more complicated than that. But
well, it's essential for us to be awake and aware, right? To then realize what reality we're in, right? What shit is our mind making up? What stories are we living in, so that we can then have that choice point that you're talking about.
Yeah. And I think the hardest thing for most people to connect to, when we go deeper and deeper into that philosophy, that we're ultimately fully responsible for our response to the world, right? Because it is our response to the world that creates the new narratives which present the new worlds we step into, like stepping stones on a pathway, right? Our response to the current negative reality, if it's negative, we will place a new stone of negativity to step into in the future, because the imprint is in us, and we'll have the bias to see negativity. But if we begin to change our response to, at the very least, what can I learn from this terrible thing? Then the next time a terrible thing happens, our mind will naturally go to, through the neural pathways, etc., there might be a lesson for me here. Yeah. And a lesson turns into a wisdom, and a wisdom turns into an action. And over time, what used to trouble us infinitely informs us, teaches us. But that takes habit. Yeah.
Right. And the curiosity, right? And the ability to ask ourselves the question you just said, what can I learn in this moment? Or what's here for me to pay attention to, right, is so important. What a guide that can help anchor us and ground us. And even just circling back to, when you noticed this morning when you were just drinking coffee and kind of rushed out the door, that awareness of like, oh yeah, what am I learning here? I had a very similar morning as well. I didn't meditate. I got out and I was like, it's my husband's birthday today, so it's kind of like rushing to do things for other people. And I realized, I'm not taking care of myself. I feel out of my skin, out of my body. I need to come back. So just even paying attention to that reality that I'm creating. Hector, tell us a little bit about how you got into Buddhism and how, your story to becoming a teacher.
Good question. I'm a reluctant Buddhist to this day, okay? Because there is a tendency to think that I belong to a club of Buddhists, And my idea of Buddhist isn't what I'm at the moment. So that's pretty Buddhisty to say, I know.
I love it.
But honestly, I still have this thing. Nobody owns full awakening. The Buddha, however, having studied 25 years, and that lineage, was meticulous at writing down all the realizations that humans can have to awaken to the troubles and the sufferings of the human condition. So that's why I became more of a Buddhist. But how? The short of it is, in my 20s, I just moved to New York. I'm going to be famous like everyone, and I was broke and depressed and terrible in my 20s. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm not ever going to be famous. And it was the hardest time of my life. I was a little very broke, and extremely broken, but I didn't know it. And so to pass the time in your 20s, you go get really drunk with friends all the time, and that's what I was heading to do. I was heading to a housewarming party, and I walked into the wrong party. Next door to my friend's apartment was 3 Jewels, Tibetan bookstore and tea house, opening night. And I'm like, is that where they're having the party? I walk in, yeah? And it's just monks and nuns. They just opened this studio. Wow. And this nun, Annie Palmer, a short, feisty nun from Barbados who had opened this space, she's like, oh, you brought a present. And she saw a housewarming gift that I brought from my friend. And she dragged me all the way to the back of the space. And she says, you can make an offering to the statue of Tara. And I'm like, what the hell is going on?
You're like, wrong party.
I realized later it was the wrong party. And so then I left and I went next door and got drunk. They kept my housewarming gift to Tara, the statue. I'm like, what the hell? But that night, Wade, I had the most transformative dream I had ever had. Wow. And a girl that I met in 3 Jewels appeared in the middle of my dream, resolved all my problems, like that feeling of broken. She appeared in the dream and she says, Hector, you found home. And when she said that, it felt true. And she pointed to the skyline of New York. She's like, you're home. This is home. And 3 Jewels, the place I'd walked into, was in the skyline. And it gave me a sense of I've reached where I needed to reach. And I I am not that kind of person. I was reading Ayn Rand for 5 years before that, going, everyone's wrong, I'm right. Buddhism wasn't something I was very interested in doing. So I went back after that dream the next day. I met a monk. He taught me to meditate. I couldn't do it. I was very stubborn, and I kept going until I could learn. 2 weeks later, I'm stuck. I'm realizing my mind knows nothing. And so I just began to learn from him reluctantly for about 2 years until I realized this technology actually shifts in a deeper way that I'd ever known, starting with meditation and then the investigation of what is the mind? How can it transform? What is it that we can achieve with this consciousness of ours? And really the fruits of human success is only a tiny speck on what you can actually abide in. And when I realized that, I obsessed about studying all the same books that the Dalai Lama studies. We got new translations into English through the 90s of that, through a scholar. And that's what really turned my mind into, I can't keep it to myself. I got to teach it. So it wasn't, I'm a reluctant teacher. I can do it. I'd rather sit in a cave and do my own experience, but it'd be selfish of me to not share the magic that this thing has done for me.
Yeah. Wow. I have chills from that story. You were meant to be. You were meant to walk into that space.
I can't tell you. Now I'm the president of...
I was just about to say, and now you're the president of Children Jewels. So
I never would have thought. And I feel like I'm a volunteer like everyone else there. It's a non-profit, and we share meditation and wellness practices to places and people that can't afford it or would never walk into a studio. So we go to homeless shelters, we go to transitional housings as a non-profit, troubled youth. We teach in all sorts of places, not publicly, one-on-one or privately. And then we have this awesome, sexy, hip studio of people in their 20s and 30s looking fly, and I'm the oldest dude in there, and it really is a diverse and stunning community of people that just love that everyone has this same potential. And it doesn't matter what you look like, where you come from, what language you speak. It's just a stunning thing. I was definitely meant to be there.
Tell us a little bit about the Med Gala that is happening, inspiration and vision for creating that, because I'm so jealous that Seattle doesn't have a little bit more of that energy. And, I wish I could be there on May 5th. So tell
There's an airplane that it can get you here. And your husband.
Forgot about that technology.
You're not levitating anymore. Get your husband over here. Now, this is the most extravagant thing Three Jewels has done. And it's based on a meditation called Future Refuge. So there's this meditation we teach at Three Jewels. We're using meditation as a visualization in order to create mental states. You imagine that as you sit to meditate, the world around you transforms. You're not just in your room anymore. And as you breathe out, the room transforms into whatever your perfect and ideal space for complete peace is like. So you create your world, and some people create it on the beach, under a waterfall, in the sky. Everyone has their own nuance of what it would feel like to be completely at peace. So they create that world. It's just them. Finally, they can exhale. So this meditation where you're like, this is what it feels to be deeply relaxed and at ease. No one's watching. It's just me. I can be me. And then in this meditation, a cushion appears in front of you, and this figure begins to walk from the distance in your perfect place towards you. And they're sort of made of light in the distance. You can't see them. Rainbow a little bit, morphing. And then they sit in front of you, and you begin to see that they are very familiar, deeply familiar. And they begin to take shape, and it is your future self. It is the future you who has achieved everything you've ever wanted to achieve. And depending on your background, it could be like lifetimes from now or this lifetime, but it is your enlightened form that has transcended time and suffering and space. And so whatever wade looks like all these wades ahead of you, they know every step you need to take to transcend every suffering. They know every opportunity you need to step into, and they've seen you do it. And they're just waiting for you. They're waiting for you to come and hang out. And so you sit in front of your future self, and basically you fall in love and trust that you know all the answers already. And so that future refuge, that future enlightened you you communicate. You don't have to talk or anything. You just hang out, look at each other's eyes, and then imagine what it would be like for them to look back at you now and say, oh, I remember where you're at. And they still love you unconditionally. Like, there's nothing to worry about, Wade. Like, you're okay. You're going to be okay, I promise. And there's this like, experience of acceptance and certainty that you're going to be okay, given all of time and space, right? So that's the basis of the Med Gala celebration, which I'll tell you in a sec, but you were going to say something.
Well, I just love the power with that visualization of sitting and connecting to your wiser, future, enlightened self. And then it sounds like that deep trust, right? That gets to just be absorbed, which I know is something that's so hard for a lot of us to receive, is trusting ourselves and trusting timing and trusting the universe. And so, wow, I got chills just hearing that.
Yeah, no, it's a powerful, powerful hack to thinking ourselves as normal. Because all we're doing really is we're sitting in a room imagining. But you felt the power of that.
Yeah.
Our mind, having that imagination, deeply shifts, I guess, the code, the source code of our programming. Yeah. So it's incredible that the Buddhists knew this 2,000 years ago.
Right, we're stepping out of all of the limiting beliefs and the fears and the things that keep us stuck or stagnant or small.
Yeah. So we realized that post-COVID, 3 Jewels being a non-profit, there are so many for-profit meditation studios, yoga studios, wellness brands in New York. Many of them suffered great losses through COVID. Many studios closed. Communities were left without a place to go. And some of them trickled into 3 Jewels. Some are trying to restart. So we felt we're in a strong position in New York. We have 46,000 visits every year. It's pretty stunning what 3 Jewels has become in all those years. We felt it was our responsibility to say this isn't just another business or an industry. As a nonprofit, let's celebrate the power to unlock the human potential through meditation with all the other businesses, brands, and communities that are trying to do that or have tried to do that and survived the COVID experience. Because it's up to us, the people that can do these technologies, to come together and say to everyone else, we're not competing, we're collaborating, because every mind, without exception, has access to this unlimited potential. You just need to get to it. So how do we do that? We invite everyone to show up for 4 hours as your future enlightened self, like whatever that dress would be like, the makeup, and try and have that view for 4 hours as we meet and greet a whole bunch of people. There's like live performances from musicians, local musicians. It's just a party. There's like a 5-minute mindfulness moment at the beginning, but everyone's dressed up, red carpet, celebrities are coming, over 1,000 people to the event. It's in a massive space, and all the funds from the tickets and so on will go to give access to meditation teacher training to leaders in communities that won't normally have access or are excluded from having access to this technology, just so we can balance out the playing field.
Yeah.
So, and it's Mental Health Month in May, so we're doing it as preventative mental health, contribute to the equalizing of everyone having access to mental wellness services. I mean, some of the teachers we've got and mentors we have are teaching in small communities in the Bronx, in Poland through the war. We've had this for several years, but we thought it was necessary to gather the clans, if you will, and say, we need to help the world in the next 5 years because we haven't gone through a collective trauma like this. And this opportunity to surpass suffering now.
Yes, and everybody deserves access to this medicine and to learn how to do it, and then for it to also be normalized as something that is accessible and for everybody. A lot of the mindfulness meditation world has been captured in our media by white Lululemon wearing women, and and so I think this vision is beautiful to make it accessible and to make sure that they're teachers that look and sound like everybody out there in the world, spreading this gift.
Yeah, I mean, the last 2 years, we've given away about $200,000 worth of scholarships to people that wouldn't normally have access to these things. And it's paid off. You should see the diversity of age, gender, race at 3 Jewels. And and they're teaching in places 3 Joules will never reach, so we believe in it so much. We're throwing this party in order for everyone to contribute to the future of meditation teachers in the world, and it's really and that happens May 5th at 7 p.m. Tickets are at medgala.org. And it happens every year, and there's opportunity for helping scholarships after that as well. So people should get involved if they're interested.
Yeah, I will link all of this information in the show notes, and Centered in the City members get a discount by using discount code CTE. So we'll add that in as well to get more of the word out. And what a beautiful gift this is. And I can't wait to see photos and hear about the experience afterwards. Hector, tell listeners where people can learn more about you and what you're up to and the gifts that you share.
Awesome. Yeah. So on my Instagram, you can reach me at WakeUpist, like WakeUpist. I'm sure you'll put a link, or Hector Marcel. And 3Joules spelled out .org, 3joules.org. You'll see all of the programming that I've been able to put together with 50 teachers now that teach meditation, yoga, and other things. And it's a nonprofit, so if you have opportunities for nonprofits to go and teach, we're happy to connect and see what it is. But I also have a TED Talk, How to Get Rid of the Angry Boss. That'll give you the first touch point that I had to understand the technology of mind and apply it. And it's a real live test case of what it takes to transform a negative experience into a teaching. And so how to get rid of the angry boss on TED, you could connect, or you could just check me out at Instagram or TikTok if you have it, Hector Marcel.
Amazing. Thank you, Hector, for being here.
It's my pleasure, Wade.
Thanks so much for listening to the Centered in the City podcast. If this episode resonated with you, if you want to share this episode with a loved one or a friend, go ahead and share the fun, as well as join Hector and I on Instagram to continue the conversation about what you're learning about yourself and how you can use mindfulness and meditation as you navigate living in the city. Until next time, stay centered.